RageQuitters, the home of anything other than good Christian magic. My goal here is to help you play better cards, you scrub, play those cards better than others, and have a good time while others don't, and maybe win a game. A big shout out to those patrons who support me. Jump to Sebastian Wolf on Patreon and show me some love. Patrons get early access to all Deck Tech videos long before they appear on YouTube. Plus there's plenty of other cool stuff there as well. How long is too long? In this episode, we're going to look at the Commander turn time problem. Now let's stop pretending this isn't a problem. If you're playing Commander and your turn regularly takes 10 minutes, you're not demonstrating intelligence, you're not showcasing mastery of the format, you're not playing four-dimensional chess, you're wasting 3 other people's time. So in this episode, we're going to address the giant token-covered elephant in the room, the time problem. Commander players love talking about power levels, salt scores, Rule Zero conversations, and whether some obscure card should be banned. But one of the biggest problems facing the format isn't a card, it's people taking forever to play. The uncomfortable truth is that Commander has become bloated with busy work. Think about everything players are expected to track these days. Monarch, dungeons, day and night, the initiative, experience counters, poison counters, treasure tokens, clue tokens, food tokens, sagas, planeswalkers, emblems, dice rolls, coin flips, copy, effects, triggered abilities stacked on top of triggered abilities. Gone are the days where your big turn was just untapping 6 lands and casting 2 spells. Now, you're drawing cards, creating tokens, distributing counters, searching your library, resolving triggers, making more tokens from those triggers, rolling dice to determine another trigger, then spending 2 minutes trying to remember whether you've already completed a dungeon room this turn. And that's before you've actually attacked anyone. The result is obvious. Modern Commander naturally consumes more time than it used to. Even players who aren't deliberately wasting time can burn through enormous chunks of a game simply by performing standard game actions. But here's the problem. Just because the format has become more complicated doesn't mean players get a free pass to play slowly. Some responsibility still falls on the person holding the cards. The 2 types of Commander players that drive me absolutely insane are the players who start their turn with no plan whatsoever, and the players who seem determined to cram every possible interaction ever printed into a single deck. The first player spends the entire turn staring at their hand like they've never seen these cards before. You've had 3 turns to think. You've watched the board develop. You've seen the threats. You've seen the opportunities. If your thought process begins when you untap, you're already behind. It's like walking into McDonald's for the 1000th time, and when the queue thins and it's your time to order, you stare at the menu wondering what they have to eat today. The second player, however, builds a deck that generates 17 triggers from every game action, then acts surprised when their turn takes 15 minutes. At some point, deck construction becomes a choice. If your deck requires a flowchart, a spreadsheet, 3 reminder cards, and an assistant referee just to resolve your upkeep trigger, then maybe, just maybe, you've built something that is more interested in playing solitaire than Commander. And if your playgroup regularly complains about game length, maybe stop bringing decks that generate a 100 game action before combat. Here's a radical concept. Fast Commander doesn't necessarily mean playing stronger decks. Sometimes it means playing cleaner decks. Decks that make decisions quickly. Decks that can execute a game plan efficiently. Decks that don't require a small administrative team to manage the board state. If you want games to move faster, the solution isn't always more removal, more ramp, or more tutors. Sometimes the solution is simply fewer moving parts. Know your deck, know your triggers, know what you're tutoring for before you search, think during other people's turns, practice your combo lines before bringing them to the table, and for the love of all things cardboard, stop treating every main phase like you're calculating a moon landing. Commander is a multiplayer format. 3 other people are sitting at that table. Their time matters too. If your deck can't function without taking 10-minute turns, or you can't pilot it without stopping every 30 seconds to try and figure out what's happening, then the problem isn't the format. The problem is the pilot. Play faster, plan ahead, pass the turn. For most Commander games, turns 1 through 3 should be almost automatic. Play a land, cast a spell, pass. By turns 4 through 7, when board states start developing and decisions actually matter, a player should be able to complete their turns in 3 to 4 minutes. Not 10, not 15, 3 to 4. Once you hit turn 8 and beyond, sure, things change. Somebody's trying to combo off. Somebody's trying to set up lethal combat. Someone's attempting whatever eldritch nonsense their deck was designed to do. Longer turns become understandable because the game is approaching its conclusion. But if every turn is a 20-minute dissertation on possible outcomes, you're not playing Magic anymore. You're holding the table hostage. Commander already has a reputation for glacially slow games. Competitive EDH often wraps up in a handful of turns because players know their decks, know their lines, and they execute them well. Casual Commander, on the other hand, frequently drags on for 2, 3, even 4 hours. Why? Partly because of battle cruiser magic. 40 life, gigantic board states, endless value engines, and everyone waiting for someone else to make the first move. Also, partly because of stacks. If your game plan involves locking the table under resource denial pieces and preventing anyone from actually playing Magic, congratulations. You've successfully transformed a card game into a waiting room. Partly because of trigger overload. The player who announces 14 triggers, draws 9 cards, gains 17 life, creates 6 tokens, spend 5 minutes figuring out what any of this means isn't advancing the game. They're slowing it down. But the biggest culprit is analysis paralysis. Commander players love to talk about complex board states as if they're performing emergency surgery. You're deciding which cardboard rectangle to tap, not launching a spacecraft. Think during other people's turns, plan ahead, know your deck, have a rough idea of what you're doing before priority gets passed to you. And yes, some commanders are worse than others. My personal hall of shame starts with Tom Bombadil. Every time that deck hits the table, the room ages visibly. Trigger chains, saga tracking, endless sequencing. Watching a Tom Bombadil player resolve a turn feels like waiting for a government department to process paperwork. If your commander naturally creates a dozen game actions every turn and you can't execute them quickly, maybe it's time to play something simpler. That's not gatekeeping, that's respecting the table. Here's the reality. A typical 4-hour Commander game should take roughly 60 to 90 minutes. That's it. Do the math. Each player gets around 15 to 20 minutes of active game time spread across the entire match. Not per turn, the entire match. Commander is a social format. People come to play, not to watch you think. If your turns are consistently longer than everyone else's combined, you're not the protagonist of the story. You're the reason the game has ended. Know your deck, know your lines, make your decisions, then pass the damn turn. Let's get one thing straight before the comment section explodes here. Long turns are part of Magic. Always have been, always will. Storm players aren't taking long turns because they're evil. Combo players aren't committing some social crime because their deck finally assembled all of the pieces. A player who spends 10 minutes executing a game-winning line isn't necessarily doing anything wrong. In fact, some archetypes simply require longer turns to function. Storm is more prevalent now than it has been in years thanks to cards like Vivi, Prismari, and the unbanning of Lutri. Most Storm players spend the first half of the game doing almost nothing. Their turns are often 30 seconds long. Then suddenly they have the turn. The turn their entire deck was built to produce. That's not a flaw, that's the point. Just as aggro decks eventually have to turn creatures sideways and enter the red zone, Storm decks eventually have to cast a ridiculous number of spells. Control decks eventually have to answer the threats. Reanimator decks eventually have to reanimate something horrifying. That's one of the beautiful things about Magic. Almost every playstyle imaginable exists somewhere in the game. But that's not what we're talking about today. Most Commander players don't actually mind long games. Most Commander players don't even mind long turns. What they mind is watching someone spend 5, 6, 7 minutes accomplishing absolutely nothing. Drawing a card, thinking, checking their graveyard, thinking, counting mana, thinking, looking at the board, thinking, looking at their hand again, thinking, and then eventually casting a cultivate and passing the turn. That isn't a complicated game state. That isn't an intricate combo. They just wasted time because here's the reality no one likes hearing. We came to play Magic, not watch someone else play Magic. A 2 hour game isn't necessarily a bad game, but a 2 hour game when one player consumed an hour of that time, that's miserable. That becomes the defining memory of the match, not the cool interaction, not the comeback, not the winning play, just the feel of sitting there wondering if the game was ever going to move forward. Think about the math. Let's say each player takes 6 minutes for every turn. Not 15, not 10, just 6 minutes. In a 4 player pod, that's 24 minutes for a single rotation around the table. If the game reaches turn 8, then congratulations, you've just signed up for a 3 hour and 20 minute Commander game. 3 hours and 20 minutes. At that point, is anyone still conscious? Has somebody cast sleep and forgotten to put the card into the graveyard? Because the entire table appears to be under its effect. And no, this is not an argument for chess clocks. This isn't a demand that every turn be completed at lightning speed. This isn't some crusade against complex decks. It's a plea for basic awareness. Understand that there are 3 other human beings sitting at the table. Your time matters, their time matters too. Take the time you need, not the time you can get away with. If you've got a combo turn, take your combo turn. If you've got a complicated board state, work through it. If you're about to win the game, nobody cares if your turn takes a few extra minutes. But if every single turn feels like a committee meeting that somehow ends without a decision being made, don't be surprised when the rest of the table gets frustrated. And don't be surprised when you become the target. Because every extra minute you spend doing nothing is another brushstroke on the giant target you're painting across your own back. By the time your turn finally ends, the paint has dried, and the 3 other players have had plenty of time to watch it happen. At the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason: to sling spells and turn cardboard sideways, and by doing so, have a good time with other people who love this ridiculous game. Nobody is demanding perfect play. Nobody is asking for a chess clock. Long games will happen. That's Commander. Just remember that your fun isn't the only fun at the table. Be mindful of the time you're taking. Respect the 3 other players sitting across from you. Know your deck, plan ahead, and keep the game moving whenever you can, because no matter how competitive, complicated, salty, or spectacular the game becomes, never forget the most important thing. It's just a game, and games are supposed to be fun. And as always, Rage Quitters, do not go gentle into that good night. Make your opponents rage against the dying of the light.